about the global hitman. He worked for the IMF and other related entities, and we've really seen how they've imposed their will on the third world in terms of getting a hold of resources, putting in certain economic conditions, making the debt tied to the nation following the global program they want to put them on. But it's especially personal, especially violating when they tie that to the life and death of individuals. When they say who can live or die has to do with who's going to receive that money.
Right, and it's all being done. Well, you're all voluntarily committed to this program. You can all volunteer for this. It's not mandatory, but actually it is, because these third world countries are completely dependent on these fundings. So it's a very smart way, from their dark point of view, to implement this kind of program.
Yeah, and of course, you dig up a lot of old documents. You cover, for instance, Rockefeller Foundation documents from the 60s and on. But this is a current document. It was published in 2010, only 2 years ago, and it was looking forward all the way to the year 2015. So it's not as if they used to be part of eugenics and are giving it up. They're clearly moving this program forward, figuring out how to advance it for the certain countries. Now, we saw Kissinger in the 70s when he was National Security Advisor to Gerald Ford, right on the heels of the Nixon administration, declaring food as a weapon. And I know we have some of those quotes here now, and they really tried to tie then national security of the United States to the burgeoning populations in key third world countries. Secondly, they tried to tie food aid to a number of countries, particularly those that are starving, to the population reduction. And that's what they mean by food as a weapon, that they are going to withhold rations if the country doesn't cut the population. It's sort of a dire trade-off of the most basic, just terrible positions. I mean, starving people, basically, if they don't cut their numbers. What do you think about that?
Well, they did it in Iraq. It's the famous oil for food or food for oil program. That was a clear-cut example to pursue their geopolitical program. And Kissinger is, of course, on the forefront of this. And he used that in that National Security State Memorandum 200. Again, this World Bank also talks about a global consensus. So it's not just one country or one region. It's a global consensus, and that's been admitted by not only the World Bank, but also by the head of the World Bank in the 1980s, I should say, which is Klaus Töpfer, also a Bilderberg attendee. And he was also an executive director to the United Nations Environmental Program. And he admitted in 2000 that an international consensus on worldwide population control has been established and is active right now. He gave this speech in Berlin, and he stated, "Most people and policymakers, and I quote, are unaware that there is an international consensus that grounds population policy in human rights and development."
Yeah, and it's important to note that a lot of these countries get very angry about the West, rather heavy-handed population control methodologies. So much of it is Rockefeller family-led and so forth and so on. But you see places like India and Pakistan where we've got covert drone warfare, covert war spilling over from Afghanistan, all on the al-Qaeda pretext. At the same time, Bill Gates and his friends are pushing vaccines in the country, and it's harming, in some cases, tens of thousands of children. And a lot of the key experts in those countries are outraged about it. You see the same thing in countries in Africa and Latin America as well. What have you found on that front?
Well, not too much, but I know this is going on, of course. You got all these different pieces of the puzzle, you should say, of this scientific dictatorship. That's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, of course, and the Rockefeller Foundation. They all work in unison, in a global consensus to make this possible. So they use food as a weapon. They use vaccines as a soft kill weapon. And of course, they use media as a brainwashing weapon, and they use UNESCO, or UNESCO uses them as a way to brainwash the youth from a very, very early age on to concepts and desensitizing them to concepts such as reproductive health, which in essence means abortions. and it's making it okay for, even to the youngest of people. So that's a crime outright.
Sure. Yeah, now I want to pull up a series of quotes here to show how long this part of the agenda has been going on. Again, here we're talking about the World Bank and the United Nations Population Fund, talking about tying the loans to these sovereign countries through the population control mechanism. You see this going all the way back to the 40s and 50s with Bertrand Russell. So he wrote then in The Impact of Science on Society, 1953, about the International Food Authority he wanted to create. He said, to deal with the problem of increasing population and decreasing food supplies, it will be necessary to find ways of preventing an increase in world population. If this is to be done other than by war, pestilence, and famine, it will demand a powerful international authority. This authority should deal out the world's food to various nations in proportion to their population. If any nation subsequently increased its population, it should not on that account receive any more food. The motive for not increasing population will therefore be very compelling. And you see this again in the 70s with Kissinger. We just talked about his food as a weapon quotes, but you also see it in Ecoscience, the book by White House advisor John P. Holdren and Ehrlich. They talked about the planetary regime rather than the international authority. Same thing. Perhaps those agencies, combined with the United Nations Environmental Program and the United Nations Population Agencies, might be eventually developed into a planetary regime, a sort of international super agency for population, resources, and environment. Such a comprehensive planetary regime could control the development, administration, conservation, and distribution of all natural resources, including all food on the international market. The planetary regime might be given responsibility for determining the optimum population for the world for each region and arbitrating the various countries' shares within the regional limits. So that's really the same basic concept we're talking about here. Here it's tied under the loan and the lending agreements and all the strings that we've seen, again, in these IMF-controlled countries. But here the World Bank is using, again, the population as the primary carrot, the lure on the stick.
Right. And you have this this quote by the planetary regime. There are many words for that, and there is a global consensus. So that's just written and it's documented. When we look at this World Bank report, they actually say that the strategy and the consensus can be best achieved by a coordinated strategy implemented by a visible, strong, and high-level in-country unit with a mandate to design, monitor, and evaluate the effectiveness of the program. So that means in-country units are stationed in third world countries to make sure these depopulation programs will be executed.
It's just crazy. It's brash. It's so written in the language, but they know people aren't reading these reports. They're still paying attention, even if they're reading internet news, to very superficial stories. But this is all part of the deep research, and you've been doing it for, I don't know how many years now, at least 5+. Tell them about your new website and some of the old archive works you're going to be posted there.
Well, my new website is called explosivereports.com. And I just put it up in the last couple of weeks, so I still have to do a lot of work have to put a lot of work in that, especially post a lot of my older articles, and I will be posted on the homepage of the website, the featured articles, the most recent ones, which I will also be sending through to INFOWARS, of course.
And what's the latest from your perspective on the Bilderberg meeting coming up, the agenda they're going to be pursuing, and some of the key attendees?
Well, the key attendees, besides the usual suspects, let's say, Queen Beatrix and all those, will probably political figures that will play an important role in the coming months and years in creating a crisis in regards to the euro. And that euro that has to be maintained and will be moved into a global currency or a world currency. I think that's the next step they want to do. But it is going to be difficult because the resistance in European countries now, not only Greece, is mounting. So that's good news from the front. So they're what Paul Joseph Watson wrote today, a little bit panicking, I think.
Well, Greece has really been revolting against the austerity measures, saying they're going to buck that debt. And that's the whole purpose of putting those debts on the weaker European countries, so they could try to get them in line the way they've been doing with these developing world countries through the IMF, through the World Bank, and those related programs.
Right, and it was in 1955 that the Bilderberg report, or a transcript of one of the reports, said that the plan for world currency was already outlined then in 1955. So that's just being executed now every year again by the Bilderberg group, coordinating all of this. And I think you'll see resistance mounting even further now in the next couple of years, despite what Bilderberg plans to do. So I think that's good news from the front. There's a lot of resistance, also in the Netherlands, also in France, also in Germany, against this rising tide of tyranny.
Absolutely. Well, we'll leave it there for today. Yuri Mason, and your website again is explosivereports.com, and you're featured regularly on INFOWARS.com. Thanks for joining us. And that's all for tonight's INFOWARS Nightly News. We'll be back again tomorrow. Don't forget, you could support us not only monetarily, but by getting the word out. You could do that in one stone's throw by becoming a subscriber at PrisonPlanet.tv. We have a 15-day free trial going on right now if you want to check it out first. We also have a number of great products that both help get the word out, help educate other people about our mission, and, of course, fund this operation. You can find those at the INFOWARS store, URL INFOWARSshop.com. And we have everything from preparedness items to books where you can educate yourself and others, radios to stay in tune, and lots of great books and T-shirts. Farmageddon was a great documentary on the crackdown on really very American farming techniques, traditional stuff, and lots of great T-shirts, Star Wars logos, declarations of freedoms, come and take it, TSA shirts, and a whole lot more. Just check it out for yourself, and please consider supporting us here at the INFOWARS Nightly News. That's all for tonight. I'm Aaron Dykes.